I let it happen. I stood still while the line blurred. While his words soaked into the cracks my husband never saw. I didn't stop it, I welcomed it. I craved the attention, the eyes that saw me, even if they shouldn't have. And now he's gone, and I'm left with silence, shame, and a heart that betrayed its vows. I was supposed to be better. I was supposed to protect him. But instead, I failed us both. My stepson left me a note I wasn't supposed to read. What followed changed everything. It wasn't long, just a single sheet of folded paper, left beside the coffee maker like any casual reminder. But the moment I saw my name on the front, my actual name, not Mom, not Marissa, I knew something was off. My hands were shaking before I even touched it. And by the time I finished reading those 7 handwritten lines, the woman I thought I was didn't exist anymore. I still don't know why he wrote it. Maybe he wanted to be caught. Maybe he thought I already knew. Maybe it wasn't even meant for me. But the way he described me, the way he said he saw me, it was like someone had opened a window in a house I didn't realize was suffocating me. I can still hear the sound of the fridge humming, the morning rain tapping against the window pane, my breath catching halfway through his last sentence. I stood there frozen, coffee mug in one hand, note in the other, as everything I believed about who I was supposed to be, quietly cracked. And here's the worst part. I didn't tear it up. I didn't throw it away. I read it again, and again, and again. So before you judge me, before you think you already know where this story goes, stay with me. Because I didn't wake up one day hoping to fall for the one person I was never supposed to look at that way. I didn't plan this. I didn't invite it, but I also didn't walk away. And if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wanted to be truly seen, maybe you'll understand what happened next. James wasn't cruel. He wasn't unfaithful. He was just gone. Even when he was there. We shared a home that looked perfect from the outside, clean counters, matching coffee mugs, fresh cut lawn, but on the inside, we were strangers. He worked late, traveled often, always had a reason to be somewhere else. And even when he sat beside me, he wasn't really with me. Just a screen between us. A quiet wall I couldn't reach through. I used to try little things. Wearing perfume, leaving notes in his suitcase, making his favorite meals, but it all faded into routine, into silence, into being invisible. Eventually, I stopped speaking during dinner. Because why talk if no one is really listening? I wasn't angry. That would have required more energy than I had left. I was just numb, tired, like I was standing behind glass, watching my life move without me. I'd smile at parties, make polite conversation, lie through my teeth when people asked how happy we were. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't have a marriage. I had a calendar and a husband-shaped outline in the bed beside me. And that's where Tyler found me, half here, half hollow. Tyler wasn't around much. College kept him busy, and James rarely mentioned him unless it was about grades or summer internships. I didn't think much of it. I was just Dad's wife to him. I assumed, another adult in the background of his life. But that changed the weekend he came home for spring break. It started small. He offered to help carry groceries in from the car, made casual conversation while I cooked dinner. Asked how work was going, not in a polite, filler way, but like he actually cared. Like he was really listening. I didn't know what to do with that kind of attention. It had been years since someone looked me in the eye and waited for the answer. We sat on the patio one afternoon, both holding mugs of tea, watching the light slip behind the trees. I remember he said, "You look peaceful like that." And for some reason, I felt my chest tighten. No one had said something like that to me in so long, not even James. Not even close. I laughed it off, told myself he was just being sweet, just a polite young man making conversation. But the way he looked at me after he said it, it lingered, like he saw something no one else noticed. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because something in the air had already shifted, and I think we both felt it. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. Just the three of us, James, Tyler, and me, in a cabin tucked deep in the woods. James called it family time. But really, it was just another one of his half-hearted attempts to prove we were still functional. But then work called, like it always did. He left Saturday afternoon, promising he'd be back by morning. That left Tyler and me alone in the cabin. The air was cool, the sky was already dark. And somewhere around 8 p.m., the power flickered once, then went out completely. No signal, Tyler muttered, checking his phone. The storm outside had knocked out everything, Wi-Fi, lights, even the heat. We lit candles, sat in the living room in silence. The fire crackling, casting soft shadows on the wooden walls. I poured a second glass of wine. Then a third. He offered to help with the dishes. But I told him to sit. So he did, on the floor by the fireplace. We started talking, about nothing, and then about everything, the way people do when there's nothing left to distract them. I laughed at something he said, really laughed, and when I looked down, he was already watching me. It wasn't inappropriate, not yet, but it wasn't nothing either. The room felt warmer than it should have, quieter than it needed to be, and when I stood up to grab a blanket, I felt his eyes follow me. That was the moment I realized something unspoken was starting to take shape. The next morning, James still hadn't returned. I woke early, before the sun crested the trees. Before the silence became something heavy. Tyler was already gone from the living room. His blanket folded, the wine glasses rinsed. The storm had passed, but the air still felt dense, like it hadn't fully cleared. I walked into the kitchen, barefoot, rubbing my eyes. That's when I saw it. A single folded piece of paper resting beside the coffee pot. My name written on it in his handwriting. Not Mom, just Marissa. I stared at it for a long time. My heart started pounding before I even touched it. I thought about walking away, pretending I never saw it. But my fingers moved on their own. I unfolded the paper. There were only 7 lines. No greeting, no sign-off. Just him, raw, unfiltered. I see you, you know, not the way he sees you. Or doesn't. I see the way you hold everything in just to keep peace. I see the way you light candles even when you're alone. The way you laugh when you're really laughing. You're not invisible, not to me. You're the most vivid thing in this house. And I can't pretend I don't feel that anymore. I read it once, then again, and again. Each time, something cracked a little deeper inside me. I didn't know if I was horrified or relieved. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. But I knew one thing with certainty, once those words were written. Once I read them, we could never go back to the silence before them. Because now, the truth had a voice. And it had chosen mine to echo in. I didn't see him again until late that night. James had texted saying he'd be back the next morning. I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. The note stayed folded in my pocket, pressing against my thigh like a secret with a heartbeat. Tyler was on the porch when I stepped out, arms crossed, hood pulled over his head. The night was quiet, except for the distant hum of crickets and the wind rustling through the trees. I sat beside him. Neither of us said a word. Minutes passed, maybe more. I'm sorry, he finally whispered. For what? I asked, not trusting my voice. For saying it out loud. I didn't respond. I didn't have the language for what was happening between us. All I knew was my hands felt too still, my breath too loud. He turned to look at me. Really look. And for the first time, I didn't look away. His hand brushed mine, light, tentative, testing the space between fear and hope. I didn't move. I should have. I didn't. That brief contact sent a rush through my body I hadn't felt in years. Not desire, not yet, but something dangerously close, aliveness. His fingers lingered for a second too long. Then he pulled back. We should go inside, I said quietly, not knowing whether I meant it as invitation or escape. He nodded, but neither of us stood up. That silence, the one that hung in the air like fog, said more than anything we could have spoken. We hadn't crossed a line. But the ground beneath us had already begun to shift. I woke to the sound of footsteps. Distant, careful, a door closing softly. When I stepped into the hallway, Tyler's things were gone. His backpack, his shoes, vanished like a dream I couldn't hold onto. On the kitchen counter, where the note had been the day before, there was nothing but a coffee mug. Rinsed and upside down. He didn't say goodbye. James came home around noon. Kissed my cheek like he always did. Asked if the weekend went okay. I smiled, lied, said it was quiet, peaceful. But nothing about me felt peaceful. I moved through the rest of the day like a ghost. I cooked dinner, washed sheets, answered emails, but my thoughts kept slipping. Uninvited, back to the porch, back to his voice, his eyes, that almost touch between our hands. That night, I sat alone in the living room. Candles lit, Tyler's note unfolded in my lap. I read it again, mouthing the words like a prayer I didn't understand, over and over. He hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. He spoke a truth he probably didn't want to carry alone anymore. But now I was carrying it too. And it was heavier than I expected. I told myself it was nothing. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't crossed that final line. But deep down, I knew we had stepped into a space that couldn't be undone. Not by silence, not by distance. Because once someone sees you in that unspoken, aching way, you never unsee them either. And no matter how far they walk away, they still echo. For days, I told myself it didn't matter, that nothing happened, that I imagined more than was there. But every time I walked past the porch, I could still feel the warmth of that silence, the weight of that almost. I kept going through the motions, smiling when James spoke, nodding when necessary, pretending not to notice how much further apart we felt, even while sitting side by side. His world was numbers and meetings. Mine was memory and doubt. I tried to erase the note. Not physically, I couldn't bring myself to do that. But mentally, I tried to forget the curve of Tyler's handwriting, the way he said I wasn't invisible, that I was vivid. No one had called me vivid in years. I should have felt disgusted. I should have burned with shame. And part of me did. But another part, quieter and far more dangerous, felt seen, wanted, like maybe I wasn't disappearing after all. And that war inside me, between guilt and longing, was tearing me apart. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't dare, but I replayed our last words constantly, like a broken song looping in my chest. Who was I becoming? A woman hungry for attention from someone who wasn't hers to have? Or just a person tired of being invisible in her own life? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe just human. Tyler didn't come back. Not that week. Not the one after. James said he was probably just busy. Finals. Internship interviews. Things young men get wrapped up in. I nodded, agreed, pretended it didn't matter. But it did. I found myself listening for footsteps that never came, looking at the guest room door like it might open at any moment. It never did. Dinner returned to its usual silence. James scrolling, me chewing quietly, no one asking how my day was, no one noticing when I didn't answer. The space Tyler left behind wasn't physical. It was emotional, a temperature shift in the house, a certain stillness in the air, like the echo of a conversation no one dares mention. Sometimes I wondered if he regretted it, leaving the note, stepping too close, or maybe he sensed I would never be able to carry it with him. That I was too afraid to speak, too afraid to want. In James? He never noticed, or maybe he chose not to. He didn't ask why I was distant, why I sat on the patio at night, wine glass in hand, staring into the dark. Maybe he stopped wondering about me long ago. One night, I found Tyler's hoodie folded behind a chair. I picked it up, held it to my chest, and cried without sound. Not for him exactly, not for James either. But for the woman I used to be. The woman who once knew what was right and what was wrong. And now lived in the gray between them. I never told James. Not because I was protecting Tyler, or even myself, but because I didn't know how to explain something that never quite happened, but still managed to ruin everything. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than truth. How a single look, a single folded note, can shift the entire axis of your life without anyone else noticing. I still think about that weekend. About the firelight, the rain, the porch. About his voice, trembling but honest. About my own, quiet, complicit. Was I the adult in that moment? The mother figure? The responsible one? Or was I just a woman, tired, invisible, grasping at the first hand that saw her? I don't have the answer. I probably never will. But if you've ever lived a version of this, if you've ever stood at the edge of something you knew you shouldn't want, but couldn't ignore, I hope you'll tell me. Not to justify, not to confess, but to know I'm not entirely alone in this in-between place. Where love doesn't live, but something dangerous grows in its shadow. So I'll ask you, plainly. Have you ever been tempted to feel alive again, even if it meant betraying who you thought you were? Tell me in the comments. Tell me the part you've never said out loud. Because maybe what ruins us isn't the moment we cross the line, but the way we never really come back.